All right, I think we're good to go, Judge.
Okay, sounds great. Well, first, let me thank all of you for taking the time to be a part of today's meeting. I'm not sure what it's doing in your part of the state or your location, but here where I'm at, we're getting quite a bit of rain. It looks like it's tapered off for a few minutes here, but we've got a pretty large amount of precipitation this morning, and I think more is coming. So it's good that you can at least be in a dry location and can be a part of today's meeting. So thank you for joining us today. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I would like to welcome all of our board members who are with us today. Also, we probably have some guests that are joining us on our YouTube page or in other means, and those that are with us, we thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And first, we're going to recognize some outgoing board members. Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you may say any words or have any comments you desire.
All right, so this is our unfortunate having these by video conference that we don't get to recognize our outgoing board members in person. We have 4 actually that are rotating off the board at the end of this term, and typically at this time we have a gift for you. As an example. And so I'm going to be contacting each of you to see if I can come by and make a personal presentation of your gift. And I'm trying to see if everybody is if they're all on here. Our outgoing board members are Dr. David Lee and Geneva Paris. I think Geneva's going to call in. Kevin Smith. Kevin's on here. I want to thank Kevin for his service. And then, of course, Judge Tommy Turner will be exiting our role. We have a plan to try to keep him involved as part of our nominating committee going forward. But if you all would give at least a good virtual round of applause and thanks for our for the service that these people have provided to our governing board.
Certainly want to thank everyone that has given so many hours, so much time to help the success of the KHS, and it's been a pleasure the time that I have been involved, and it's been very enjoyable, primarily due to a great staff and the folks who we have at KHS that make it the great organization it is. So to all of you, thank you so much.
And I too just want to say that I've great. Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, I too just want to say thanks to everyone, especially the staff and to Scott and everyone who has really kept us up to date throughout this whole time of serving, getting to be a part, seeing and touching the collections and all the great things that get to be a part of being a part of this board. I have a deep appreciation and love for Kentucky and Kentucky history, and it was an honor to be able to serve on this governing board along with everyone.
Great. We appreciate you, Kevin. You have helped us. I know I've worked with you on a few legal matters concerning the board and other avenues, and to deal with the KHS. And thank you so much. Your expertise has been very beneficial to us. Well, again, thank all of you for your dedicated service. The minutes of the July 16th, 2021 board meeting were distributed to all of you via email. And I would ask if there is any additions or corrections or deletions to the minutes that have been submitted to you. If not, is there a motion offered to approve the minutes of the July 16th meeting?
So moved.
We do have a motion from Mark Nykirk.
Second.
Is there? And I think I heard a second from someone.
Mary
Hammond has the second. Thank you, Mary. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is none, all in favor of the motion, you can say aye. You can raise your hand to let us know that you are in favor. Okay, thank you so much. Teresa has reported.
Excuse me, Mr. President. I
Yes.
do need to let you know that a quorum is present.
Okay, thank you so much. Our quorum is present, so we have been conducting the meeting properly and in accordance with our bylaws. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, we did have a majority vote there, I think, on that. Let me see if I can pull up some additional faces here. Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. Next, we have a report on our 2021 nominating committee. If you will look in your packet of information that Teresa sent you out this morning, you will see that. And I had the pleasure of chairing the nominating committee. We had some outstanding people on this committee, excluding myself. I was not in that role, but we did have some really good people on this committee, and I was so honored to be a part of it. They made the job, usually the job of being chair of the committee is kind of tough, but they made the job very easy because they were all so willing to offer input, so willing to call and talk to people and to encourage people to be a part of the KHS. So as a result, it made the job very easy, and I appreciate that so much. The members of the nominating committee, as you will see there on your report, I served as chair: Tony Apro, Alyssa Keller, Sheila Mason, and Chip Atkins. So that was our group that served as the nominating committee. And you will also notice on there that we tried to research a lot of information. We tried to find people who fit diversity in many ways, whether it be geographically, whether it be ethnically, gender. We tried to make sure that we were trying to fill some slots. Now, some things did not work out exactly as we, had envisioned in some cases, simply because the numbers were not available to make things work out. And some people that we had asked about being members of the board, they have interest in the board, but just right now was not the right time for them. They could not participate due to family matters, due to work matters, or whatever. So I'm just making those comments because you may ask, well, why wasn't there more of this gender represented on the board, or why wasn't there more from this geographical area on the board, or whatever? Well, we did the best we could based on those that were offering their time and availability to serve, and we came up with some outstanding individuals who have agreed to be a part of this. Did someone have a comment? Excuse me. Okay. If you'll notice there, the slate that we have put together for the officers: President Jennifer Brown, First Vice President Cynthia Torp, Second Vice President Wayne Ongst, and Third Vice President Sheila Mason. So those are the officers that we have put together as a slate. The 2022-2025 board member class includes Dr. Deanne Stivers Allen of Manchester, Kentucky, Brent Borkman of Bowling Green, Kentucky, Curtis Dame of Rumsey, Kentucky, and Dr. Mel Hankla of Hutchins, Kentucky, or Hitchens, excuse me, not Hutchins, but Hitchens, Kentucky. And so those are the folks that we put together as a slate to recommend, and some outstanding individuals who offer a great deal of varied background, a great deal of historical knowledge that will be a tremendous plus for the KHS. I would ask Scott, is there any action this board needs to take on this, or just a knowledge of receipt of the report?
I believe it's just the receipt of it. I think it was the nominating committee responsibility. The ballot has actually already gone out as part of the annual meeting mailing. So
I thought they had. I didn't know if there was any type of action this board needed to take on this. I thought it was just acknowledged receipt, which they have, of course, received by virtue of the packet. So I guess if there's any question anyone may have regarding the nominating committee's actions or the activities that we did, please feel free to ask. As chair, I'll try to answer those for you. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. And as I said, I think this is an outstanding group of individuals. And I am so pleased that we came up with some good folks here to serve on the KHS board. And thank you again to the outstanding folks who worked on the nominating committee. You did a tremendous job, and I appreciate you so much. You made the work of chair very easy, and I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move on into some old business matters. Yes, was there a question?
Yeah, this is Jennifer Brown. This is probably for Scott. We've talked about this previously, and forgive me, I cannot remember. Have we made the changes necessary so that the previous chair serves in some role with the board?
We have not, although that's actually the next item on our agenda.
Okay.
That was part of our bylaw reviews to be able to do that, and we can't do that process through a bylaw review. It requires to go in and do a statutory change to our charter. So I was actually just scanning over Evan Jones from the Tourism Arts and Heritage attorney was going to join us on the call today and kind of give us a little explanation about what the next steps were for our bylaw review. But Tommy, if it's okay, I'll just take that as my start.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And hopefully if I see Evan, if I'm missing you on the screen here, please speak up and let me know. But yeah, we've been reporting on this for quite some time and thought this was going to be an easy tweak so that we can make this edition of the immediate past president as the chair of our nominating committee, so that we had continuity within the leadership that we had, but also, and I'll even backtrack a little bit. Now is the moment, when we get to the annual meeting, now is the moment that we begin thinking about our next slate of nominees, and really would like, and the nominating committee talked about this quite a bit, of looking for people that are actively engaged with KHS already. So if you have folks, now's the time for us to be cultivating that more inclusive and diverse group of people to join the board. If we get stuck waiting till next, January or February, and then we get started, we find it's just very, very hard to, people have commitments already and things like that. So if you have ideas of people we need to start talking to, let us know now. We have a fairly healthy list already that Teresa helps keep track of for us, of people we've either approached already or we've considered approaching. And so again, welcome any ideas to help us make sure that we are looking at all factors and having all voices come to the governing board. With that said, then back to the bylaw revisions. We were looking at just a few different minor changes. One with the committee structures, and then one was to allow immediate past president position. But then we're also looking at some ideas where the bylaws are supposed to be set up to help inform how you basically operate your meetings. And it was, in most cases, restating and putting clarification on what is in our charter and in our statute. And they weren't congruent. So Evan is recommending that what we do is take the bylaws, simplify them down quite a bit, and then make a companion piece where we were using the bylaws to basically explain the procedures of the governing board. So it would become a companion governing board manual. And I was just speaking with BR Masters, who was on our call today, about what it would take for us to go in and then make some cleanup language changes to our statute, adding in immediate past president. But also one that we noticed is that the bylaws created the state historian, and we would want to see that added in as an amendment to our charter. So the process for that will be is that probably at our next meeting in January, we would consider what are those cleanup language things. You all would act upon them, and then we would still have time to get those proposed in legislation during the spring session. Any questions that I might have glossed through real quick on the bylaw updates?
I know when we first began looking at the bylaw, Scott, we thought it was a rather simple, or could be a rather simple change and adjustment on some of the bylaws that we wanted to do. And then the more we got into it, we found out our bylaws are so intertwined with statutory regulations and other things that it's just very, very difficult without just a rewrite of the statute to make the changes that we looked at. So,
and Judge, I just saw Evan pop up. I don't know, Evan, if you caught all that explanation, but I was just doing the explanation about why we decided to do a deeper dive into revisions to the bylaws, then the corresponding board manual, and then the cleanup language to our statutory charter.
Yeah, I did. I didn't have my camera on, but I think I heard most of what you said. Yeah, but that was a good explanation. Bylaws are really internal, how you internally operate, so if you're going to do Robert's Rules of Orders, if you want to do, how you're going to set up committees and those kinds of things, that goes into your bylaws and something that you would vote on and hopefully wouldn't need to revise very often, every few years, maybe you tweak them. And I've seen this in other boards where a lot of times the statutes get restated, and it's usually to be helpful and explain, but it really becomes kind of, well, it diverts from what bylaws really are. And then also I guess you said a companion page, or sometimes we do a new member guide. It says, here's the statute, and then break the statute down with annotations and kind of explain and get people off on the right track. And that kind of document we could change every week, if we wanted to, because it's not a bylaw that you're voting on to provide framework, but it's just an explanation of the charter and maybe break down some of the processes and who you call for this. We can change that all the time. So that's what we'd recommend, just to kind of advance. And then going to the charter, that's more BR's lane, of course. But if you want to add positions, we can help you draft those revisions, and then you would need to get a sponsor with the legislature to make that permanent. But that's all stuff we can help you with. You just got to give us some guidance on what you want to do with it.
So bottom line, where does that leave us in terms of Tommy's continued involvement? Can we just throw him on a committee and keep him there for life? Or what do we do?
Well, while Evan's hopefully still there, I think one of the pieces that's in the charter, I believe it is that the president has the ability to form committees and appoint members. They don't have to be governing board members, but to appoint members to those committees. And so as long as Tommy maintains his membership and is in good standing, I believe we have a mechanism to allow him to be appointed to the nominating committee. I will double check that first, but that's our hope, Dr. Turley, of how we can do that.
Yeah, and generally, if you're going to, if you're going to have honorary positions, you probably have some freedom to do that. But if you're going to create a position and give voting rights, that really needs to be in the charter, which is in statute.
Scott, did you say that the board could take action in January and still have time to get this approved in the session?
I believe so. I said, just talking with BR about the calendar for that, our next meeting will be mid-January, and it being a long session, I think the last day to file bills would probably be into February. Is that what maybe possibly it goes into April? The session does, so a little longer period to file them. We would want to do the work up front. I see a couple other faces on here that I'm probably way out of my league on talking about this, but it feels like we have enough time to be able to, but we'd want to do that legwork up front so that once you all make action on it, then we have somebody who's willing to introduce this and get the changes made. We've done these, I think the last time was 2015, if I recall right. And it sails through, it's fairly non-controversial in what we're proposing. But again, it's always a good thing to be cautious and take it one step at a time.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions regarding the bylaws revisions? Okay, Scott, then thank you so much on the discussion on that part of our agenda. Let's move on to the historical markers and talk about them.
Sure, have an update. This is another topic we've covered multiple times, and wanted to kind of preface it with, so I've got some team members here that are going to give us an update. But when we first started coming to you and said, hey, we're going to change the policies for the markers, and we were going to form a committee, markers and the impression of markers have gone through quite a few changes in the last 18 months to 24 months, right, gang? And so we've been kind of, I don't want to say building this in the air, but this has given us the opportunity to test some things as we've gone through this review and see what best practices that we want to put into place. So with that introduction, you have information that came out in the binder today about our marker review and some proposals that we have. So is that enough, Mandy? Can I kick it to you to help talk a little bit about our review process? And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you, Scott. Please interrupt all the time to tell me to be more clear. So we, as you all know, paused acceptance of new applications during the pandemic. But when we made that decision, we had 4 applications in the office. And so over the course of looking at what was going on in the app and all kinds of other things, we came up with a review rubric that we wanted to test out, and for that we used these applications that we already had in, the 4 that are in your packet. And Jennifer Brown was so courteous to help us test this out and to work with us, so we're very thankful for that. And the change there is that there's now numerical rubric in how we're reviewing, and you can see the various things that we are asking folks to consider when they submit an application, and then how we would review them. Out of this review, we see that it works and have found we would like to approve. The review committee is suggesting that we approve based on their numbers 3 of the 4 applications. So that would be the Midway Freedman School, Sisters of Mercy, and Private Henry B. Mattingly. You can see a little bit about those applications and then where their scores fell out of a 10 average in your packet. So we are seeking, so part of this change, sorry, I should back up. Part of this change is that in the past, the review committee made their recommendations to KHS staff, and KHS staff then took those recommendations as the final result of review and informed applicants of their approval or a revised, what we are calling a revise and resubmit, or a rejection of applications. Part of this revamping of the review is to ask the governing board for consent of approval of these, of the reviewers' work going forward. So I will turn this back over to Scott for that part of it.
Sure. And let me also just add, this is also, you'll see in your packet there a summary of some of the marker policy things that we're trying to do. These are not new. If you go back, and we also included a history of the marker program that Mandy also revised or updated and very, very concisely pointed out. The idea of that the markers need to be defendable and have defendable historical evidence that is connecting to not just communities locally, but regionally and statewide, that it shows a broad community support, which is a key piece. That in some of these markers, as the review goes on, we see the contested elements of them. You will find in the research file little or no community support for them. And so it leads to problematic pieces going down the road. The new policy is also the mechanism for review, to which we now have or testing out. And then also how do we maintain deeper relationships? So I think Jennifer and Mandy could speak to the idea that just through this process, through this rubric process, you're having to create a much deeper understanding with the applicants about what's going on. So to that end, I think we would ask for a motion to approve the 3 markers as outlined by Mandy.
Scott, I had a question. So it's rated from 1 to 10. What is the actual level when you say this is acceptable, this is not? Is it like it has to be more than 7 score, or how is that managed?
Dr. Hurley, that's a great question, and you're exactly right. It is more than 7. So approvals, no discussion will happen if it's a less than an average of a 7. And then above that is where discussion would happen, and that kind of, it could be different, a little different each time depending on the caliber of the application. So if the applications come through and we have 30 of them, we're saying we're only going to approve 12 in a year, and
but I came back because
20 of them are 8s or above, then the line will move a little bit, but we'll never move below a 7.
Okay, and if you say you do go back to the community and let them know why their application was not accepted,
Yes, ma'am.
so that they do have an opportunity to resubmit in the
Yes.
future?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
so it is both quantitative and qualitative analysis in that way by our review committee. We ask them to provide comments if they have questions or things they would want to see for a strengthened application, as well as sometimes contacts, or they need to look at this. So we're able to help guide folks through who maybe have a less developed application.
Right, thank you, because that's part, for some people, this is a brand new process, and understanding the necessary steps to get approval. Is there something online? The new changes now are going to be up on the website so that people have access to it?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
And to add to that too, I mean, part of our process is to raise the standard for the program. Going forward, we would like to, and we're not quite to that point yet, but propose that we're only looking at accepting 12 markers a year that meet these higher standards, higher pieces. So working with communities to make sure that the marker meets that mark, hits that mark, is going to be very important. But we were approving, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Jody and Mandy, 30 markers a year, and it was getting, it was, in my opinion, and I think as we were saying, it was very hard to build up more of a statewide message that we were celebrating this community and their history when we were constantly running to do marker dedications, and it was diminishing the involvement, the follow-up we were able to do with those local communities too. So anyhow, that's part of our reason for trying to create this nice rubric that it gives us. We use something similar in this with the Oral History Commission grant reviews.
Scott, is KHS paying for these markers, or are the local organizations paying for them?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the local organizations are still providing the funding for the fabrication of the marker.
Okay.
Scott, I wanted to mention that I've been involved in the review of applications probably 4 or 5 times since I joined the board. And the process that we went through this time was much improved. And I felt more confident that I was making more clear-headed decisions, that I had sort of a roadmap of look at this, this, and this is a certain percentage, and this is a certain percentage. It was really well done. So I feel going forward that KHS is in a better position to make quality decisions about what should have a marker.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Chandler, did you have a question?
Yes, you've answered a couple of them. I wanted to know who's paying for the program, and there's no historical society money in the program at all.
No, but that's one of my additional budget requests that we're looking to put into to our budget next week. And then also it'll be part of my report later on is like how can you all support us to see if we can't return this. Historically, this was a state funded program. The state provided funds for the program. And I believe it was in the 60s, late 60s that was removed, or was it even after that?
1992.
Oh, okay. Yeah, much later. So in 92, we went to the sponsor piece, and it does create a lot of problems, I believe. You could have somebody who does the fundraising, gets a marker, and then that marker gets damaged or hit and broken, and there's no funding to replace it. It also then ended up leading to what we had prior to the COVID work that was being done by the team, almost 300 markers that were down and not able to be replaced due to funding. We were able to use some state funding to replace over 80. Did we get close to 100? Over 80, I know, markers using state funding over the past year, but we don't have a sustainable model to clear the rest of the 200 backlog that we have.
But did you all go through some kind of process to limit the markers, the annual markers at 12? And is that a magic number for some reason?
We did not go through, it is somewhat of a magic number. If we did one a month, which it doesn't work out quite that well because of the way that we can do the installations. But that way it gave our staff the resources to be able to go into that community and celebrate that marker. Yeah, and just to limit it to the 12.
And is that has the board discussed that in any great detail? I'm a little curious about that because I kind of like to have a lot of markers, and I understand some of the rationale for not having very many, but you've got historic districts and you've got individuals throughout the state that you want to be more involved in history rather than less involved. And if they've got a better chance of getting a marker that's the history is verifiable, it seems to me it would encourage more involvement. But I mean, I'm sure there's some quality control issue here. I guess you all maybe have been okaying markers that were not accurate or what?
I'm gonna actually call on Mandy to kind of maybe answer that part. Let me start off with, I think our next step in this process, again, we were kind of working through this to come up with what's a best way to do this and test certain elements of it. We still need to come back to this group with our recommendations of what the policies for the marker program going forward, and definitely leave some time for some good discussions about what would be the best model for us to operate under. Mandy, I didn't know if you could answer the last part of that question.
So I wouldn't say that we were putting up markers that weren't verifiable. One of the questions that we're mulling with and what we hope to bring to you soon is what rises to the level of a historical marker that's going to be on the landscape, hopefully for 50 or 60 or 70 years, versus how do we decide that? Because for a long time, and as the community engagement person, I love this, it was having folks tell us what mattered in their communities, and that's part of what we look at in the review. But sometimes what matters in an individual community doesn't rise to the level of state history. So finding mechanisms for how we can acknowledge and honor local history that ties to larger regional, state, and national stories. And it may not always be the marker program to do that. And we're still kind of mulling with how that goes, but I don't want to say that we were consistently putting up bad history. There was the program has gone through many changes. It started out as a tourism initiative. Then when it came to the state, there was this moment of kind of broad commemoration and we'll put it up everywhere. And now we're sort of playing with where to go from there.
It seems to me that this is a very important issue because this is really what most Kentuckians associate. It's their connection with Kentucky history, maybe more than any other thing that the Kentucky Historical Society is involved in. Mm-hmm. That's just my observation as a lay person who likes history a lot. The most I know about the Kentucky Historical Society comes from these markers that I see all over the state. And I just think it warrants a long and very careful discussion about what the policy ought to be and whether fewer is less is more or not. I think that's a real question.
I agree with that. I do. I think it depends on whether or not we get state funding. If we can, with no state funding, there's not a lot of resources to spend on it. But if we do get some state funding, then it puts a lot more, I think, emphasis on the program. And as we mentioned before, legislators love these things in their districts. It's a great, I think, it's great for KHS to have them. I also think that it's really important for us to know what we're going to do when we go to the legislature to ask. And so I think it's pretty imperative that we do this quickly. And so when we go to the legislators, we could say, this is the way we're going to do it. And this is what you'll see in your district when we get the money.
Well, I sure wouldn't foreclose having local contribution to it either. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who would pony up the money to get a historical marker for a particular thing that they might be interested in their community. I understand why the board or the society ought to make sure that what they're interested in has value and certainly is verifiable. But I don't know how statewide you need to make it, unless I don't think a lot of these little counties have their own marker programs, county marker programs, so they don't really have much in the way of an alternative to put something up to mark the history of particular activities in their counties.
And
Yeah,
Ben,
Ben, excuse me, go ahead, Jennifer.
I've seen this from many different angles, and I do agree with you that more than anything else, people across Kentucky associate the marker program with the Kentucky Historical Society, and it's our brand. It's very important. In terms, I wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, you're right that local communities will raise money if they believe in something. I was in charge of getting some money raised in Hopkinsville a few years ago for a marker, and it was a very easy ask when you told them, what it was going to be. It was easy money to raise. Now, I want to point out that as somebody who served on the committee to review the markers for a number of times, it's disappointing the quality of many of the applications that we get. There's not a lot of research done. There's a lot of, when my neighbor told me once about such and such, and not the kind of documentation that you want to see. There are more of those than you might realize. And so when you have a program where the public has the ability to raise the money and there's not any, restriction, and I'm not saying that there weren't any restrictions, but there can be some kind of pressure there, like, we've got the money, what's the problem type thing. And I think that's always been a challenge for the staff. But I agree. I think that, we need to do everything possible to help people propose quality markers for their communities.
Right, and that was my concern. So thank you for that, Jennifer. That was my concern, is that Kentucky has a lot of history that connects to a national and regional. Like, for instance, I was looking at the Sisters of Mercy that came up as one of the markers, and I had questions. So that's a big, big national topic. It's not just Kentucky. Sisters of Mercy were training, they took care of the Civil War soldiers, but they also trained African-American women on how to care for soldiers. And I'm wondering, is the focus for that marker just on Louisville? Or are there other places where Sisters of Mercy functioned? I know they were in Washington, D.C., but did they also function in other parts of the state? And how is that information, if I click on that marker information, what is it going to pull up? How deep is that information well, so people can begin for us to document where Sisters of Mercy may have operated outside of Louisville? So those sorts of things would help people to, I think, understand how important what they have in their community and how it does connect to a national or a regional or a state history. So,
well, that's another question too. It seems to me is what is the standard for a connection to regional or national history? I mean, I could make an argument for almost anything. It just they're movements of people, and where they settle and all that sort of thing is arguably regional history and national history. And I don't know where you I don't know what kind of rubric you've set up to draw the line on what kind of connection you have to have, but it strikes me that to some extent that would almost have to be a subjective standard.
And I don't know if Mandy or Jody have any comment, but you're correct. There's that part of it, that it is subjective, but I would say during this most recent review that they've gone through, I think that, again, the markers and the tone that they're written in has taken drastic, major changes throughout, since the 1940s. And so in that review process, I think that starts to set which ones are reaching that narrative level that make those national, regional, and broader connections that we're looking for. Again, the idea is to encourage that to happen. Another part of this, not to forget, and I think actually, Dr. Turley, you were referencing it, is that the work of creating the marker has much more potential than more than just what gets appeared on the Khs plaque, right? So how do we take that information and leverage that out into whatever lives on the online app or whatever hits on the marker database? And so the team has actually been looking at the referencing of what that kind of data and information goes into. While I'm talking too, and Ben, you had mentioned this too. We mentioned this. So how do we, if it's not the Kentucky Historical Society historic marker that is how we're celebrating somebody's local history, what other mechanism might we have in place that would help do that? And we don't have an answer for that that I know of. But I do think that's a key point, right? So how do we, if we're going to limit that, then we would have to have some mechanism that would be, help encourage. That's our goal, right? We want to encourage local history and the recognition of it. So what will we do to that end?
Yeah, that's one of my big concerns. If you limit this program too much, I think you really run the risk of having the kind of level of interest that you want to encourage.
If I could just, first of all, I think this is an important discussion. I like that we're having it. And a couple of things. One, the process seems, it doesn't seem quite right to have. It's not that people shouldn't be able to nominate, but it feels like a better process, or at least an auxiliary process, would be for, say, a panel of historians to nominate some new markers each year. People with some expertise on what is it that we're not celebrating and noting that we should be. The other thing is I know that when I see one of these markers, I always want to stop and read it, and you can't. You're on the highway.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Technology now allows, we should maybe be looking at a digital model where these are broadcast, or there's a podcast location, and there's technology to do this. So if you turned your smartphone on and your Bluetooth, every time you went by a marker site, it would give you a podcast on what happened there. And the marker is nice, and if you're walking, you stop and you read it and so forth. But if you see it when you're driving, it's just kind of like, wonder what happened there. It's interesting. It has a marker.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that we still have, it seems, Scott, from the letter that's in our packet, it's another example of it, some work to do on correcting inaccurate markers. There's one in Newport at the Taylor Mansion that says it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. The Taylors were slaveholders. I'm thinking maybe they didn't use their mansion to help people escape slavery. So I don't know why it says that. Other than that, that's kind of a local legend that in the region, but it doesn't stand to reason. And I think, in past board meetings, we've had similar discussions that there are markers that need to be corrected. So I think this is an important discussion. And Ben, I appreciate you saying that it is one of the most significant public faces of the Historical Society. So what could we do to ramp it up? But I think some curated decisions about where things, what sites should be noted some stepped up pace for bringing more in and looking at digital alternatives, for which there are significant grants to help with on that, and then correcting the incorrect ones. It doesn't do any good to have inaccurate history up.
Mark, you bring up some real, excuse me. And also, if you all would, we had getting quite a bit of background noise there. If you have your microphone, maybe mute it if you're not talking, just to make sure that we don't all hear other conversations. But I wanted to say that Mark, you bring up some good points, as you do as well, Ben and Alistine and others. You're really bringing up some good points. Back when I first came in as president of the KHS, I know I sat down with Scott and I said, Scott, one thing that I think we're missing here is a greater emphasis on the marker program. And I think we need to look at many avenues and things we need to do on the marker program. I said, one thing we need to do is make sure that the current markers that we have, that they get refurbished to where they are actually usable. Now I'm going to bring this up. This is a marker in my county. Now, you can only read that marker if you walk up to that marker and get within about 6 feet of it. Of course, it's sitting on the side of a road, and you can't pull your car off the road. And as you say, Mark, a lot of these markers are in places that they're really inaccessible. One thing that got my interest on markers in terms of making them accessible, I was traveling through Texas several years ago. And in Texas, you will have a sign that says historical marker, 1,500 feet. And then when you get to that historical marker, there is actually a little pull-off area or a loop around it where you can actually pull in and loop around the marker so that you can read both sides of it. And we made a really fun family event out of reading the markers as we traveled. And we learned a great deal about Texas and about the communities there. And as you say, Ben, a lot of the history that people know of Kentucky and know of their region and communities is a result of what they have learned from these markers that they've read. And when a marker is unreadable or inaccessible, it's really not doing much good. I'm sure it did have a place in someone's heart, which was the instigation for that marker being there to start with. It's there, but it's not doing its purpose. And so Scott and I sat down and we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about such things as getting the transportation cabinet involved to try to see if we could improve access location to these markers. In some cases, it's just a matter of moving a marker, 50 feet one way or the other, or moving it beside an entranceway where it's not an entranceway now, where a person could pull in and read it, that sort of thing. We also talked about the refurbishment of many of the markers to make them readable. And then, as you mentioned, Mark, we even talked about, is there a way that we could attach at the bottom of these a barcode or a QR code, something to where a person could simply hold their phone against it, or as you said, as they passed, they could maybe a GPS coordinate would read on their phone that marker was there and would bring the marker up. It would tell them the information that's on it. I think there's quite a few things out there that are left to be done. We did have something that happened though. We had one meeting and then a thing called COVID hit, and it sort of put a halt to a lot of the discussions that we had. And so I think we've got a lot of room for improvement on the marker program, things we can do. And I think I am proud that there has been a push. Scott and his folks have really made a push to try to improve it, the program, to try to include all that they can in terms of different individuals to make sure the program is much more than it is now. And I do appreciate that, but I want to see it continue. I think there's so much that we can do to make this a really shining piece of history here in Kentucky, to let everyone know about Kentucky's history. And we can spend our whole meeting talking about the marker program, and we certainly don't want to do that. But I think there's so much potential there that we need to capture. And other comments, Jennifer, excuse me, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, we did have a couple more things we wanted to present about the marker program. I also saw Dr. Turley has her hand up, so I didn't know if we had any comments before we move to the next report about the marker program.
I was just going to say that for me, with students, marker programs have always been a great educational tool, especially if you're trying to connect teachers, elementary, high school level teachers in history. That a marker program is great because most students hate history. So if you have something where they actually have a marker in their program and you start to quiz them about why is it there and who is it and all of that, it really does lead to an interest in history, which I'm all about promoting. And the marker program does a great job of that. That's all I was going to add. Just it's a great community tool and probably does drive a lot of students to the Historical Society as well as the website, all of that.
In our next part of this, and you all have touched on this already, again, Mandy and Allie and the team have been doing a review of the marker program in total, right? So markers come under fire a little bit. And again, the material has changed or there's language on there that might be inappropriate and different things. And we've talked about this. And so I'd ask if Mandy could maybe give us an example of where we have gone in and successfully made a modification to a marker and reinstalled. And then also we're going to have moments to where we're going to come to you and say, there's some markers that they're not up right now and we probably don't need to put them back up. Because the changes are going to be so large that or there's the inaccuracies. And again, I'm going too far because I'm going to steal Mandy's thunder, but I didn't know, Mandy, if you would like to report on those two examples that we wanted to share with them.
Yeah, so as Scott mentioned, we were able to use some funds in the last fiscal year to look at some of the deferred maintenance in the program. And one of the markers that we looked at that had been down for quite a while was the Lewis and Clark in Kentucky York marker, which is on the waterfront in Louisville and was part of the Expedition bicentennial celebration. At the time that the marker was erected, as you can see in your packet, one side of the description focused a lot on Clark and less on York, but this marker is about York. So we took this opportunity to go in and expand the story a little bit, worked with our partners at the Filson who had helped put this marker up to begin with and who have a large Clark family collection, to just reshape the language a little bit to reflect modern standards in historiographical studies and the language that we use. And that marker will go back up on the waterfront, and it actually let us tell a little bit more about York because we shifted the language to be a little bit more active and to tell at least what we thought we knew. So the marker of the past had said that York was freed in 1815. We don't know if that's actually the date. So we were able to say, we know he was enslaved until at least 1815 because there's conflicting evidence in the record. I mean, this was a really nice way for us to show the ways that history works and that we do the work. And then to also add that York's story continues to inspire Kentucky artists today. So calling back to the work of artists in Louisville who are doing that. So this is some of the things we're looking at is how some markers just need a tweak and some markers, which would be the second example, that example on the third page of this report, marker 1110, which was also part of this maintenance project and then was at the right time, a concerned citizen came to us with first a question about where it was and why it was located where it had been that he felt that it needed to be moved. But as we went through the research in the file, we saw that it was actually not good history. It had been put up with defensible text at the time that it was dedicated, which was in the late 1960s. And in the intervening years, historians and constitutional scholars have said, no, this is bunk. This isn't what should go up. And so it is in storage now. We have a letter from our colleague Dan Vivian who suggests that it stay that way. And those are the sorts of questions and the things that we'll be looking at is how do we verify this? What is the community consensus around that verification? Who are the experts that we can talk to and consult with? And then what sorts of actions will we bring to both KHS's staff and to y'all? Is that what you want to say?
Thanks, Mandy. And I'll repeat this too, and you all alluded to this, and I've said it in the past. One of the liabilities of having a program that actually casts history in metal, it creates this impression that history is never changing. And so this moment, and again, I reference a quote from my friend at the Georgia Historical Society. He was like, I wish our markers would self-destruct every 60 years so we were forced to go back and relook at them. And so the pandemic gave us that moment to go back and actually review all of our markers. And thanks to Mandy and the team, we have a lot of work to go through to do this. Again, the majority of it will be along these minor tweak models, but when it comes to that moment to where it would be in our best interest to actually retire or decommission a marker or whatever, it'll follow this kind of model that Mandy just kind of outlined here. That it won't be one of those moments where it's just a knee-jerk piece. We're going to go back in and really do the research and make sure that we have a good defendable reason of why we would propose the retirement of a marker.
Okay. Well, I'm so thrilled that we're having discussion on the markers because I think they're such an important avenue for us to reach to everyday Kentucky and tell Kentucky's story, tell the history of the folks here. And I agree with Ben. I would love to see a lot more of them out there because Kentucky has so much history that's yet to be told. And we just need to have that story out there for sure. Any other questions?
You still had a request for to take action on those 3 markers. We were asking the board to.
Oh, okay. So we need to take action on those. Okay. Okay. Any further comments before we move to take action on those markers? Okay. If not, I guess, Scott, we just need to have a motion to authorize the creation of those markers, correct? Is that what we need to do? Okay. All righty.
So
if there's no further. Okay, we have a motion that has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Any discussion? If there is none, all in favor of the motion. Oh, yes. Is there discussion?
I have a question. Who made the motion?
Yes. It sounded like Ben. Was that you, Ben?
Okay, that's what I needed. I got the second.
I didn't see it on my screen, but I kind of recognized that voice, I think. So okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, you can raise your hand or you can say aye just so that Teresa can acknowledge that you are in favor. Okay, Teresa, you have a majority there, I think. Okay. All right, thank you all so much. And it thrills me, as I said, to have the discussion of the markers, and I hope we have a great deal more in the future. And I think it's something we've got to preserve our history, and that's a good way to do it. Okay, we'll move on. Let me just tell you a little bit about in old business, the annual meeting. Of course, our annual meeting will be held in 3 weeks. It will be on November 5th. This will be a Zoom meeting unless something drastic happens and we have COVID out of the picture by then, which I doubt. Would be a miracle. It will not happen. But that will be at 5:30. I think that the date of our annual meeting is in statute, isn't it, Scott? I think, Teresa, that's correct. Yes. So, yeah. it's the first Friday in November, so it has to be held then. It's sad that we can't have it at the old Capitol as we've always done in the past up until last year, because that is such a great experience and a great setting to have the Kentucky Historical Society there, a building that we are in charge of. And but due to the circumstances, we can't do that. It will be a Zoom meeting, so just be on notice of that, and we'll be sending out info to you over the next couple of weeks regarding that meeting. So just put it on your calendar. Make sure you're there. We'd love to have you. Okay, we'll move on then to new business matters.
Real quick, Judge.
First, yes.
Oh, I just wanted to also remind people that there's a little difference to our annual meeting. Typically, we would follow it up with the annual Kentucky History Awards. And this year, we're going to do a little bit something different. And the team is working on how we're celebrating community history. And if you would indulge me, I know we had a great, robust conversation about the markers, but I'd like to share a little preview of what you would experience on the Kentucky History Celebration, if you don't mind.
Certainly, certainly.
You ready? Yep.
We are sitting in the Pennyroyal Area Museum.
Locust Grove is the home of General George Rogers Clark.
Beattyville is a little town on the river in eastern Kentucky.
The Highlands Museum and Discovery Center is located in downtown Ashland, Kentucky.
Main Street Perryville was established in 2007.
We named the Danville County African American Historical Society.
Behringer Crawford Museum is all about local history in northern Kentucky.
Unlike other typical history awards, this year we're not looking at individual winners. We feel like the last 18 months we've all had to survive a lot and shift and change, and so we want to celebrate the good work that is happening across the Commonwealth and not think about individuals, but in the communities that are doing the work.
We just finished a big renovation, closed in 2018, renovated all through 19, and got open on February 27th of 2020, and we were open for about 2.5 weeks before COVID closed us.
Throughout the pandemic, a lot was going on, not just about COVID-19, but social justice movements and civic engagement.
Well, a number of us who have been grappling through the past decades with how to effectively interpret the lives of enslaved people realized that we really had a common cause.
There's things missing, so we created what we call the Soul to Second Street Festival, and it's been in existence. This is the 6th year, I think, and we couldn't do it last year because of the pandemic.
On March 1st, 2021, we had a devastating historic flood hit our town. Every building and every business on Main Street was affected.
It shows that a town of 751 people can overcome anything, just like they did in 1862 after the battle.
The 7 values of history provide us with perspectives in order for us to do our work.
In these modern times, we understand that critical thinking as a value of history is essential to effective communication and problem solving.
I am inspired by history, and it has made me want to learn more about my own place within Kentucky's past.
Let's not just talk about the history that they're doing, but why history is valuable.
I'm proud that we figured out a way to make the best of it and to still manage to meet our mission to share local history and to get people involved in it.
By including more people, you get better questions and better answers and better resonance with the public.
You can't replace your history. Your history is so important to your town, just like the buildings on Main Street.
During severe times and hard times, the people of Perryville will come together and they will survive, and I'm very proud of them for that.
Our legacy will be what we have already started. We'll continue long after, we've gone on. So,
that was perfect. That is exactly what we were. Yes, that was awesome.
So that's just the teaser to what you'll experience if you stay tuned after we conclude our annual meeting. I believe it's going to be a 30-minute presentation. That was the raw video, by the way. So there's a lot of work that they're still working on to make that. And thank you. Many of you participated in that video, and I'm kind of jealous the team got to go around and visit all these sites and see all this great local history that was going on. But again, it was fun to look at the representation of all the work that we've been hearing lots of stories about. It's not just the people that are featured in this video, but we heard a lot of resilience that's been going on for the last couple of years. And so we wanted to make sure that we acknowledged all of that work and not just a few select history award winners.
Great.
That's my report.
That's great. That is great, Scott. Looking forward to it. Okay, we'll move on to new business, Scott. We'll put you right back on here to talk about legislative priorities.
Yes. There's a page in the binder there that outlines 4 of our legislative. It's tough how to classify this as our legislative priorities, but these are things that we're going to seek funding to be added into those. So when you look down that list, if you have that in front of you, the first part of that is those historic commissions, the Kentucky Sesquicentennial Commission, and then also let me see if I can pull mine up to make sure I'm saying the right thing here. I don't have it in front of me, but the Sesquicentennial Commission, but then also looking at the funding for the markers program that we could do. So 300,000 was just a number that we came up based upon what it would take to do 12 markers a year, plus invest into a maintenance pool so that we can continue to address the backlog of markers that exist. And then also to start thinking about the renovations of the old state capitol, and not just as a capital project, but that the building and the grounds are in need of preservation efforts. And I think that there's some opportunities for us to do some federal grants towards that end, or some private fundraising, but to get us up off the ground, to maybe have a site plan created for that building and get that set up under our preservation piece. And the last one that's in there, we've put in, and we've talked about this, I think, at our previous meeting, a pretty sizable capital budget request. I'm always optimistic that we're going to get them, but also realistic that it's going to be tough. We might look at a situation where, again, we try to raise some funds towards getting those first concept designs, those first feasibility studies done in the next year or two, with the argument that in 2026 and with the celebration of the US 250, the Kentucky Historical Society is the center for Kentucky history, and we're going to hopefully be welcoming increased participation in tourism to the Commonwealth. We'd like to make sure that all of our front door is open and we're spiffy and shiny and ready to reflect the most modern experiences that you would get in understanding your history as we are now. I mean, the building's over 25 years old, and some of our exhibits and pieces just need that kind of updating. And it will take us every bit of 5 years to get that kind of work done. So we need to put that request in so we can get that planning and that start now. My request for you is, if you have an opportunity to talk to your legislator or to just provide support along these initiatives, it would be greatly appreciated. We're working with the cabinet to work with the governor's office to try to put these in from that avenue. But as everybody always reminds me, is everybody loves Kentucky history, right? We just talked about that, and we find very little that we find opposition to this, but we just need to raise awareness that this is the kind of work that needs to be done to continue to invest in Kentucky history.
And the reading over this even caused me to learn a new word, semi-quincentennial. I hadn't heard of that before, but I see it on there. Semi-quincentennial. That's a neat word.
That's why we've abbreviated to the US 250 or America 250.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think, of course, we should start working on this legislative stuff as soon as possible. And I'm going to be talking to my legislator very soon. He's on the House Budget Committee. And so I'm going to talk with him regarding our needs and that sort of thing. And I would encourage any of our board members to do likewise. If you have a member that you know well, someone that you can chat with, let them know the importance of us acquiring these funds and what we need. So let's all work on that together, and hopefully something good will come from it. Any comments anyone has regarding legislative priorities and legislative matters that we're looking for next year?
The $300,000 for the marker program, was that over the biennium, or was that each year of the biennium?
Annually.
300,000 annually.
Yep.
Okay.
I would just like to thank the society and the staff for putting together this important focus on African American history, indigenous history, because you will be shocked to find out how many roads, when it comes to African American history, how many lead back to Kentucky and other parts of the nation. It's astounding how much we have not documented that other states do document. And then when they trace those roots back to Kentucky, how weak our end of it is. So if this helps us to strengthen, York was a perfect example of someone that nationally he's known, but here his life in Kentucky is lesser known. And we have many African Americans like that. So I look forward to seeing this move in that direction.
Hey, Scott, on item number 4 on the legislative request, what do you expect the output to look like on that? You know, I see the 712 or the 485. What do you expect to get out of that?
It would allow for us to hire oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not just a feasibility study, but to give us some concept designs for how we could possibly move forward with reconceptualizing both the main gallery experiences or the exhibit experiences, but then also to invest in what does a research experience up in the library need to look like? How do we modernize? And ironically, since we wrote this, I don't know, 12 months ago or started this process, we've already invested into some new digitizing equipment to start matching what kind of research elements that people need. So when you go into the library, if you haven't been in there recently, when you first walk in, you see a wall of digital readers now, so that researchers can have multiple screens in doing their research. So how do we modernize that, not just for a family history perspective, but for these fellows who are coming in worldwide to do work at our place? What's a modern research facility need to look like? So that first part would help get us the expertise to come in here and help us create the scope for what those projects will look like.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the aspects of a 25-year-old building and what looks like modernization type requests might be needed for that.
It could. I don't at this point. I wouldn't know. I mean, there's a lot of the bones of this building I think are still pretty good, but to have somebody come in and assess that would be part of this.
Yeah, I might have some. We can talk later about. I might have some ideas for you on that. That could be done with kind of sort of in a gratis type performance by certain companies that might be willing to do that for you.
Thank you, Tony.
Great. Okay, we are going to turn now to Stuart Sanders, and he is our Director of Research and Collections. And Stuart, we're going to let you talk to us about proposed policy changes on our KHS collection.
Yeah, thanks, Judge Turner. I appreciate it. Members of our collections and our library and archives team are currently really reviewing all of the different policies and procedures that govern the Kentucky Historical Society's collections. And this is a process that staff normally undertake every 5 years or so to really ensure that our staff are meeting best practices when it comes to both acquiring and caring for our important collections that we hold here in public trust. Earlier this week, Teresa sent out a copy of our collections policy, and our staff members are also reviewing that policy as part of our work. And the KHS Governing Board is actually responsible for approving any changes that are made to that specific document. So there's no call for action today, but at the next Governing Board meeting in January, I'm going to present several changes to that policy that will update some language and terminology that's in there. It'll clarify some procedures, and also, I think, make our work more efficient when it ultimately comes to dealing with our museum objects, our archival materials, and also with our library collection too. We did include a few sample suggestions of changes that are in there on pages 4 and 5, and those actually will sort of streamline the definitions of our collections. It'll help us sort of tighten up some procedures for how we handle our special use collection, which is typically used for educational programs. But once our staff has all of those changes lined up and sort of complete, I'll ask the board's research and collections subcommittee to meet sometime in December to to preview all those proposed changes. Then I'll present the policy and those changes to the full board at the next meeting in January. And if you have a copy of the policy in hand, so if you are reviewing that before that January meeting, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll happily try to help answer any questions. But I do, sort of publicly want to thank our collection staff and our library and archive staff who've been working on this ongoing process. We have about 20 policies that we look at that really dig into, how we acquire and care for collections. And so it's a wide range of things. So I'm very appreciative of their hard work and professionalism when it comes to, working to make us a much more efficient and stronger organization when it comes to our collection. So no action today on this, but in January, I look forward to seeing you guys and presenting the changes and updates to that policy. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Jessica, you have some info for us about Kentucky History Day.
Thank you, Judge Turner. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I wanted to go ahead. I know that we have talked about this before in our last meeting, but there are a few new members and those that may not be privy to it, but we're just going to go back over kind of what we think about a reimagined Boone Day. So we talked about, for those who are new, Boone Day has been a tradition that comes from the late 19th century for KHS. It was very much a social affair. There were speeches and papers on historical topics, highlights of our collection, and KHS business reports. So we want to maintain the foundation of that event, one that centers KHS at the hub of state and local history for the Commonwealth, and create kind of an annual signature event known as Kentucky History Day. Our major themes and objectives for it are, of course, history advocacy to promote the investment in the infrastructure of history, to activate our statewide network of historic-minded organizations, focusing on the values of Kentucky history, and just how we can uplift our profile and how we support our colleagues throughout the state. It gives us opportunities for networking, to provide new content and research, and also the services that we do as an institution. And it gives us a chance to really show the broad geography and what we can offer from all corners of the state. I mentioned it builds up to the America 250 and leads into a program we have called Civic Season. So our target audience is membership, of course. It's our annual membership event, but also the general public as potential members, our friends and colleagues at history-minded organizations, and all those interested in learning more about Kentucky history. A basic outline will be the Kentucky History Awards on Friday. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, it's the first weekend of June. I believe it's the 3rd and 4th of 2022. I think those are the dates on it, but the first weekend in June. So it was important for us to get it on your calendars now, that the History Awards will be that Friday night. Saturday during the day will be a campus-wide symposium. All 3 sites will be activated with programs in the library, the old state capitol, the public grounds and the lawn, of course, the Military History Museum, and here in the History Center. And then that evening, we'll host the Foundation's 30th anniversary celebration, I believe in the old state capitol. So what we wanted to make sure that you all understood, we were planning this large event, and that we will come to you for ideas on how you want to represent different areas of Kentucky with us, maybe connections to resources we can share, and just general support of the program. So I think I missed anything. Did I, Scott?
No, and we want you all to come and invite a friend. 2 friends if you want.
A carload. Yeah.
Are there any questions about the ideas for Kentucky History Day? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to some operations reports here. And first, we're going to have Karen Marlowe, who is our Director of Finance and Support Services. She's going to talk to us about our first quarter financial report. And so it's always good to talk about numbers. So Karen, we'll turn it over to you.
I think historians might rather talk about anything than numbers. But,
We had a finance committee meeting this morning before lunch and went over our numbers, and I'll give you a brief overview of it. I'll be doing this report this meeting, but I think going forward, Tony Afro will be doing our reports for us. And so I look forward to working with Tony. For the end of the first quarter, in your packet, you'll see I did a very basic outline of what we're seeing. There aren't any unexpected pluses or minuses here. Our somewhat shortage in earned revenue is expected considering the pandemic. Our foot traffic in the door is lower, therefore our retail sales are lower, our ticket sales are lower, earned revenue is lower, which is really our most variable numbers. The rest of it's pretty predictable. Personnel expenses is, if you'll look at the, it's down 150,000. Don't get excited. We're not saving 150,000. We're just pushing it into another quarter. So when I look at this, I'm like, in another world, I would be like so excited. We saved so much money, but it's actually a timing issue. We're just a little behind on our hiring expectations for the season. Other than that, the finances are relatively stable, expected. We've cut down on expenses, but then we're also down on our traffic and so forth. So like I said, even though it reflects a surplus of 140,000, that is, we're fully expect to spend it out in the coming quarters. Any questions on that piece of the financial report?
Okay, why don't you go on and talk to us now about our budget?
The biennial budget.
Yes.
We are, I have the wrong paper in front of me. So bear with me a minute. We are working, I laughed and told the committee this morning, I said, we killed a bear and daddy shot it. Linda is working on the biennial budget and I am shadowing her is what it amounts to. We have gotten our above budget request, our additional budget request into the cabinet. Cabinet has requested those and we submitted them, was it last week, Scott? Last week. And we had some directives on what those had to be from the office of the budget director. They are asking us to include a 1% salary increase for state employees. They are also working on Kentucky's payroll has historically for the last several years, they have deferred the final payroll in June into July so that it fell into the next fiscal year. And this year they're going to actually recapture that deferral back into the current year. So we will end up with one extra pay period in order to write the system where we have the correct 24 pay periods in the correct fiscal year. So they have made that one of the priorities on the ABR. The other was, I think we're going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, we're going to ask, we're to submit our personnel requests that are above our personnel cap. If we have any of those for the next 2 years that we want included on this budget. And these asks at this point we are submitting to the cabinet level, and we are competing for the same cabinet dollars that everybody else is competing for. We just want to compel them to send them our way, the ABR requests. And then I think the rest of the requests are not directives from the budget director, but they're our request, our wish list. And I think, didn't you just covered those, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the request. We are going to submit them on the tourism cabinet's budget. But I think it's my understanding, and forgive me, I am on a learning curve here, it's my understanding we, besides trying to get them on our ask with the budget, we will also, Scott will also be looking to engage legislative leaders to help us try to procure these funds for us. So we're going to be, Linda said we are next week NBB, and she had to tell me what that was. And she said NBB is nothing but biennial budget. So that is all we're doing next week, NBB. That's us. So any questions? You're muted. Mute.
So sorry. Question, Karen, about the historical markers. So what kind of budget does that look like as far as what a request would?
I'm going to defer that to Scott because Scott knows those numbers inside and out. That's his passion.
Well, I actually slept since I looked at those. And Jody, I don't know if you recall, Kevin, are you talking about the 300,000 that's in that additional budget request?
Yeah, is that for the marker program alone?
Yes.
Or what all? Okay.
And I don't have it in front of me. Jody, do you recall? The majority of that is the fabrication of markers. And I think, was there some staffing dollars in there? To help pay?
Dollars, an admin, I think 10% admin fee. There were both new markers and refurbishments and replacements.
Damage and repair.
Got it.
And I believe we also had a percentage or a number in there to, if you go on and look up the marker database. So there's two digital platforms for the markers. One of them is a 1980s web page that we don't have a lot of. I mean, we can get in and update and change, but it literally is still showing our 1991, 92 logo of KHS and all that stuff. To maybe bring it into some more modern piece, and then also to look at if we wanted to do any kind of application upgrade to the ideas you all talked about earlier. If we wanted, back in 2012, we actually talked about a markers 2.0, very 2012 type language. And part of that was to hit some of these ideas that Mark and you all discussed earlier. So we were putting some funds into that so that we can start to figure out if that was something realistic for us to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions anyone may have? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for the information you shared with us. Okay, you're welcome. Scott, we've got you for our executive director's report. I know you've already given us some information, but we'll let you share additional.
We have covered a lot. But first of all, let me also point out that if you all recall, Karen's first day with us was our last board meeting. So when she said she has hit the ground running and is catching up and doing a great job, we really appreciate having her here. She's been working with the teams. These are things that don't make the director's report typically, but she's been working with all the teams to help us think about what our financial management looks like, so that they all have the most up-to-date information. And it's not just about just saying no, but how do we make sure that we're managing our funds appropriately and managing grants and everything. So she's been spending a lot of her time getting up to speed and creating mechanisms that help report their financial situations back to each of the individual teams. So thank you, Karen, very much. And so for her to come out and do the finance report already, I really appreciate that. In your board packet that you received last Friday, there was a director's report. I was absent then, but the team went ahead and got one put together, and there's a lot of great information in there. I'll remind you too, if you're not set up to get our emails and things, we send out the KHS Insider, which also summarizes a lot of the programmatic things that are happening within the organization. So I'm not going to cover all of those because we would be here for another hour and a half. But I do want to draw your attention to a few things. And I might actually defer to some of our staff to maybe talk about this. But one of them in that report is a survey that we did with the American Alliance of Museums and Susie Wilkins. And I'm going off memory because I can't find my notes. But one of the nice things about this, and Jessica, jump in if I do this, but I think one of the big takeaways that we have from this is our membership So it was a survey that went to our members and I believe to non-members as well, and was looking at things that, why do you choose to engage with the Historical Society and some other factors. But one of the big takeaways is that people choose to be members not because they get free stuff and not because they get free admission, but because they believe in the mission of the Kentucky Historical Society. And that's really critical for us to know, because that helps inform our marketing, our promotions, the programmatic decisions that we're going to make. And it actually really puts us on a good footing to know that we don't have to convince people that we're important to be here, that they join us because they believe in what we're doing. Fair enough, Jessica. There's a lot more in that research that happened, and it's really a great piece for us to be plugged into. One of the charges that I've given to Jessica and the team is, well, let's look at what our business analytics need to be telling us. We've been saying we want to be a data-driven organization, and this is one of our early steps on helping make sure that we're making decisions based upon sound research on how we want to serve people. Jessica, you want to add anything to that part?
Yeah, absolutely, exactly that, Scott, that we're in the beginning stages. So we're just beginning to analyze first quarter of this year and the last quarter of the last fiscal year. So it's really surprising what we learn. I'm more than happy to send the results. It was in a nice PowerPoint that if anyone wants to see the results of the survey, I'm happy to share them with you. It was really surprising, when people take surveys, when they open it and get to it, they really tell you what they think. So they gave us lots of good points, but what really the overarching theme was that it wasn't about coming here to visit, to see this or do that. It was really about the purpose of our work. And we're proud of that. So we have some good starting points and continue to collect data as we move along. There are all sorts of wild ways that people collect data because we all have our little worlds in our pocket. We're getting good updates from various zip codes and from our visitation. We can even see how many people see an ad and how many of them it translates to them walking in the door. So it's really exciting to see. A little scary, but we're going to use it to our best advantage. If anyone would like to see any of our data sets, I'm happy to share.
And also correct me, that's one of like 2 or 3 different national survey things that we were asked to participate in, which has been really good for us to be able to benchmark ourselves against other organizations like us, and regionally and nationally. And I think in one case we had such a great survey response from Kentuckians that we're going to get some more drilled down information about our Kentucky visitation. One thing that's not in the report too that I wanted to address at our last meeting, we talked about, we have some funding to do strategic planning and the necessity to do that post-pandemic. Back in July, when we thought we were going to be going into post-pandemic, we were initiating that process, and it was going to involve some off-site work with you all and some work with the staff. I've kind of put a pause on that until we had a better idea of how we could actually meet in person. So this will still to come. I wanted to give you that report, and I still anticipate that we will find a way to engage you. I see Sheila, and I'm trying to think. Tommy's been through this before, where we've done like an offsites with our foundation board. But a big part of that has to happen. We have to do those analytics that Jessica just mentioned to bring to the table, so that we can talk about what strategies do we want to employ to move forward. I don't think it'll be a big shock that the US 250 is going to play a big part in what our next 5-year plan looks like. But we still have to get that information together for you. So be looking for invitations to come to participate in that. I'm going to skip real quickly then. In your packet, you had a personnel reports. There's a couple of takeaways from that report. You'll notice we had several resignations. We're not unlike what other people are experiencing. We have people who are choosing to change careers and to change jobs, and it has put a strain on the existing staff. Hats off to Sarah Underwood. We've got she's trying to get the visitor service staff up, and every time we've gone to temporary labor. Just because it was rotating so quickly, and we have a good stable group right now. But when you look at our overall complement, it's going to look lower. And that is because some of those full-time positions are now being occupied by temporary staff until we can just get our feet back up underneath us. And we hope to retransition those back into regular full-time or part-time positions in that case. That also doesn't account for, we're still trending behind where we should be. And this is, for those who've been here before, the pandemic really caught us at a bad time. We had held open a lot of positions, approximately 8 or 9. Then the pandemic hit, hiring freeze. So if you remember the story, we have not recovered from that yet. And it is also putting a strain on us. And that is one of our priorities in our biennial budget, is to restore that funding back into personnel costs. So we talked about that, I think at the last meeting, but that also gets reflected in here. When you see on that chart that we're down in the 30s for our staff, without a doubt, I would recommend to you that we need to be at least in the low 50 range of state-funded positions to be able to serve. You know, if you think about it, we're at least 3 different organizations, with the research library, the museum, the outreach, and the care and stewardship that we have to have for these collections. And yet we're doing that with just a little under 40 people. And we need to have more professional staff on board to do that. I'm going to pause in case there's any questions about the personnel report. You know, and I'm looking at volunteer hours, and I don't want it to be lost to me, and please indulge me with this. I wanted to also mention that we had a longtime volunteer that we found out yesterday that had passed away, Richard Rice. I don't know if you all, if you've been with KHS for the last few years, you've met Richard. Richard was at every annual meeting, and Richard's piece was to always make sure that he was there to second the meeting minutes. Correct, Teresa? And Richard would do that just so he can make sure he was put into the record. So the reason why I'm asking you to indulge me now is I wanted to acknowledge Richard and his passing and his service to the Historical Society. Richard volunteered in excess, well, it had to be over 2,000 hours. The records only went back to 2013. We're missing some hours when he received the Presidential Volunteer Service Award. He received multiple silver awards during his time here. He was a docent at the Ozark Capitol. I know he did a lot of special event programming for us. So I just wanted to pause for a minute and let Richard know that you will be read into the minutes today. And thank you again, Richard, for your service to the Kentucky Historical Society. Next on my list is, what report did I have next up here? It was also in your packets. Why am I missing this? Oh, the membership report. I don't think there's any big takeaways because of we're still seeing, as just the research, people are still maintaining their membership with the Historical Society despite not actually coming here to visit as often. So the numbers are holding pretty steady, and I think that plays out in the report. So I'll answer any questions you have about the membership report. Then, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to skip a couple of things. Well, okay, couple pieces I definitely want to make sure we talk about. Sorry, I'm pulling up an image to share with you. You might have seen in the Courier Journal, we had an article about our distilling history project. Who saw that? Anybody see it? And is Macaulay on the call? Has she been able to join us? Sorry, I'm scanning through real quick to see. A little bit about this project. We've talked about it, I think, almost 3 years ago. A conversation with Mac Brown. At the time, it was on our governing board. Was Mac? We've got what we think is the oldest known mash recipe, sweet mash and sour mash recipe, in our archives from the Catherine Carpenter family collection. And we think it would be a really cool idea to turn this into a bourbon and have it ready in celebration of the US 250. And Mac was like, yes, let us do it. We started the planning process a little bit, reached out to Chris Morris, the master distiller for Woodford Reserve. Everybody was like, great idea. And then the pandemic. And so it got put on hold. Well, then Chris reached back out and said, hey, I think we're ready to restart this. A little funny story for those of you that are new to it was when Chris first, he writes in very short emails. He said, how many barrels are you thinking? And I was like, I don't know. How many can we get? Can I have 10? And he's like, you can have 2. You will have a very rare and expensive bourbon. He wasn't kidding about that. So we did go to Brown-Forman has it been 2 weeks ago? They contacted us. Wasn't really certain what we were going to do there. The team came up with a mark so that we can have this placed on the end of the barrel. So when it goes into storage, it's showcased in the Kentucky Historical Society's Distilling History Project. But Chris had set up the operation so that we can create this mash in a way that Catherine Carpenter's family and farming operation would have done it back in 1818. He even created the mash rakes in his wood shop. So it was really kind of cool to get to go do that. Let me talk a little bit about the mark that you're seeing. Again, thanks to Jessica and the team for getting this done so quickly. We just wanted to have something on the barrel, but I think we ended up capturing what is a really cool story about Catherine Carpenter. And I'm gonna email this out to you. There's a blog that Sherry Daniels and Dina Thomas from our staff did several years ago that goes much more in depth about this history of Catherine. And one of those is that, she's an entrepreneur and distilling was part of everybody, of most farming operations. It wasn't like just a distilling operation that you were doing as you would see it today, but also several other aspects, agricultural pieces that she was doing. But the team comes to look at all these records and it's to be believed that this person run a very successful farming operation after lots of adversity, would be a highly educated person. The signatures indicate that she might not be able to read or write, and that her own signature is probably not in her hand. And so it starts to create these wonderful elements that we can go in and research who is doing the work on this farm, who is carrying this on. We know that Catherine Carpenter enslaved people. And so that is it the work of the enslaved folks who carried this knowledge of distilling history into what we might know as our modern distilling industry today. So there's a lot of questions that this project is going to help us raise and spend some time in investigating. The piece that we're working with Brown-Forman still, and hopefully with Mac will give us some advice on this, this could be a fundraising opportunity for the Kentucky Historical Society. And through our foundation, we're going to get about 500 to 600 bottles out of these 2 barrels, and a street value of $2,500. If we were to sell them at $5,000 for per bottle, could that be something we would want to create as an endowment fund to further research into this part of not just Catherine Carpenter, but what part of this history that comes to influence us today. So whether it's the African-American history story and the former enslaved story that we do, and just what's the agricultural history story that we would want to further delve into. Could be a pretty nice piece for us to investigate. Any questions about, and we're just getting started, so there's a lot more to come on that. I believe if Doug is on the call, Doug's already had 3 people contacting him who are willing to buy that bottle. So, so maybe advanced sales will be in our future.
That'd be great.
To round out my report, we've talked about the US 250 on a couple of things. That's going to begin to ramp up. Inside of your binder packet, I included the appointments to the 2 commissions that were formed, just so you got an idea of who was working on them. As far as the KHS Governing Board, it will be administratively attached. They are administratively attached to the Kentucky Historical Society. And I hope to find some ways, even for the folks who are rotating off, possibly, or some other ways to get more people involved from KHS. We have Rufus Friday from the Foundation Board is on one of them. And Ed Clark is actually chairing the Kentucky Centennial Commission. Tom Clark's grandson. So that'll be a nice addition to be able to have to it. So you'll keep hearing more and more and more about these two commissions and the work that we're going to hopefully be doing to help support local history. I believe that is my report.
Okay, thanks, Scott. And you mentioned Doug, and of course, Doug is going to have for us a Khs Foundation report. So Doug, we'll turn the floor to you.
All right, appreciate that, sir. Good to see y'all. Yeah, Scott mentioned this distilling history project. I mean, this is going to require very careful planning and execution. And if we do it right, this could be just huge for us. I put out one personal page Facebook post just saying, hey, I got to take part in this today. It was amazing. More on this to follow. And I had 4 Louisville-based journalists private message me just furious that we did not invite into this. The media attention on this is going to be through the roof. And as you all know, with Bourbon Files and collectors, we're going to get a great price per bottle. And if we can turn that into a fundraiser through the foundation, tremendous multi-year project for us. So we're going to stay really, really close on this. And the generosity and the hospitality from Brown Forman was just off the charts. So it's going to be a wonderful relationship. I do want to mention, I don't think we've even hit on this. We do have a new exhibit opening, Illuminations. And I'm delighted to report that we at the foundation secured a major gift for it, an underwriter for it, and to the level that they're now also a Lincoln Society member. So we were really excited about that. That was a great win for us. This opens up 11 November to kick off Frankfurt's Candlelight, the official start of the holiday season in Frankfurt. And Stuart, if I can ask you I want to gift you just an elevator speech here of my time to maybe give folks a quick hit on what Illuminations is all about.
Yeah, sure. As Doug said, it opens on November 11th. And the exhibit really notes the progression of lighting technology in Kentucky from natural light to the advent of electricity. And so when you look at that period, it's really a time of remarkable change in Kentucky especially. And so in doing so, it also explores the vast differences that existed in how Kentuckians have illuminated their lives, whether it's based on wealth, race, gender, or the urban and rural divide. So it's essentially looking at a history of light in Kentucky and how Kentuckians have made it and used it, and how it illuminates both spaces and ideas. And one thing I mentioned in the foundation board meeting this morning, how many people on the call may have had grandparents who lit their homes with Aladdin lamps or with, kerosene lanterns, things like that. Even today we're lighting our homes up for the holidays, or maybe putting a green light up in honor of COVID victims. And so, light plays such an important role in our lives, from, just daily living to commemorative activities. And, the exhibit's going to explore a lot of that. So on behalf of the staff, we're very appreciative of Doug's work, getting our sponsor. It's the Elliott Company, or the Davis H. Elliott Company, and they really handle electrical construction for utilities across the state, and they're a perfect fit for this exhibit because they also handle public lighting projects. So it dovetails well with illumination. So Doug, thanks for your help with that. So you'll be hearing a lot more about this, and the marketing team's put out some incredible advertisements that are going to be arriving soon. There's a lot planned for marketing. So you'll see a lot more about Illuminations coming up. We hope you can join us in November.
Yeah, well, thanks, Stuart. We're really excited about that. We also spent a good chunk of time this morning in our foundation board meeting rallying the troops on this massive opportunity we've got to match up major gifts and individuals and corporations who want to brand with us, be a part of helping to honor Kentucky women's veterans. And this is a full go. We are opening this exhibit in May. And Jody, if you wouldn't mind jumping on and just saying a couple quick words about where we are with that. I mean, we've got a great group of folks advising us on it, and it's going to be incredible.
It is going to be incredible. Yeah, thanks, Doug. We're very excited about this. We have recently just hired a researcher. She's a known entity with several of us here at KHS, Melinda Beck. I'm a really great storyteller too. So I think her knowledge of primary source research and storytelling is just what we need for this. Like Doug mentioned, we have this spectacular group of people who have offered to be on our advisory panel. Heather French Henry, former commissioner for Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs. We have a woman named Addie Maddox, who is the current Women Veterans Program Administrator, I believe is her title, for the same Department of Veteran Affairs. A couple of folks from Honor Flight Kentucky, and then a really interesting woman, Linda Cunningham, who Doug was first introduced to at a women's club of the Bluegrass, down in Lexington, women's club.
Central Kentucky, Women's Club of Central Kentucky.
Central Kentucky.
Who's also supporting this, yeah.
Yeah, and she was one of the very first women who were part of the training to be MPs. So she's really interesting, has a fantastic background. And what we had asked this advisory panel for originally was just a quick sort of 3 to 5 hour commitment, an initial meeting, and then some follow-up phone calls as needed, or pointing us in the direction. But they're all just chomping at the bit to be part of this exhibit. And the exhibit is not going to be chronological. It's sort of more thematic. And we're looking at 3 subsections, if you will. There's strength and resilience, innovation and adaptation. And then we're going to kind of carry it forward to civic duty and ambition. So we're just really excited about the potential of what this could be. We're going to work with a design firm to design, fabricate, and install the exhibit. That RFP has just gone out, so fingers crossed we get some good bids on that. And as Doug said, we're going to open that up for a kind of VIP member opening on May 26th. That's a Thursday. It's a Thursday of a Memorial Day weekend. And then we'll open to the public the next day. And one of the really exciting partners for this whole exhibit and the way it came about is Honor Flight Kentucky. They're going to have the very first Kentucky all-female honor flight. The flight crew, all of the participants will be women. They're still working out exactly when that date will be, but really, really dynamic and interesting group of people at that organization. And they're really excited about working with the Kentucky Historical Society, and likewise we are too.
I've been fortunate to be a flight ambassador for them several times through my media years, and we're going to have that entire manifest. Every one of those veterans are going to have a VIP experience with this exhibit, and they usually travel with about 1,000 friends and family and high school marching bands, and we're really going to make this a special event for them to see their exhibit here. So this is going to be massive, and we want each and every one of you to play a role in this. If you can help me identify individuals, family foundations, other groups that want to be a part of this through major gifts, through underwriting, we've got months and months to go here. So we're ahead of this, and we already have a pretty good financial roster. In fact, I think some of you know I serve on William and Elizabeth Shatner's board for veteran therapy, equine therapy for veterans. And the Shatners have donated $5,000 towards this event. So from their nonprofit. So it's going to be a great thing to be a part of and to show your support for Kentucky's female veterans. That's Kentucky Women's Veterans is still the working title. We're scratching our head on coming up with a the official title for this. I think Jody's got a bottle of bourbon.
I was going to say there's a bottle of bourbon in it. If you can think of a better title.
A good title. Jessica mentioned earlier too about our 30th anniversary to celebrate the foundation, and we are tying this to the event the weekend on 4 June, and you all will receive invites to this. And there's a couple things we want to accomplish here. We've got some titans on our board, the people who built this building, who are rotating off the board, and we want to honor them. And I know you do too. So that's going to be a big part of it. We also want to energize this board, our foundation board. We've got a lot of new talent on the board, and we sort of see this as a watershed moment to pass the torch. You know, there was a great call to action to get this building done, and now we've got it. And now our exhibits have a bit of age on them, and so where do we go from here? And what does that call to action look like in that heavy lift? So we want you all to be a part of that too, that rally. And it's going to be a great night, and there'll be more details to follow on that as well. You're also going to see a very strong push from the foundation for end of calendar year ask. Our donations have been pretty consistent in terms of, being a bit down from COVID, but we're coming out of this strong with new exhibits and new concepts and new ideas, and which is exactly where we wanted to be. And I give all the credit to Scott and his team for leading that charge through crisis management day to day for the last 20 plus months. So you're going to see some ask out there from us, and we should certainly appreciate your support along the way with that and your leadership, as you always do. I have so much more to talk about, but we're running out of time. Just suffice to say, one more quick thing. We mentioned Heather French Henry. We've secured her to be our new host of our Kentucky Ancestors program that the foundation helps to underwrite, and 6 new episodes are in development, and those are going to launch next February. As you can imagine, a near impossible task to replace Renee Shaw in her seat, but Heather French Henry is going to do an incredible job for us, and you'll be hearing more about that product. Kentucky History Treasures continues in Louisville and Lexington television. So yeah, the foundation's busy, and we love it, and we love working with you all. So I'm standing by to coordinate with you and your ideas, and I'd love to hear from you.
Good work. Thank you, Doug, so much.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll move on to some additional reports to hear from at today's meeting. And first, we'll have from the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet. B.R. Masters is here, and we'll have a report from the cabinet.
Thanks, Judge. Honestly, Scott's pretty well covered it all. I was going to get into, as did you, which made with your pitch to have the others contact their legislators, that saved he or I from having to do it. So that was perfect. So we've got it. And right now we're in the process, the budget process. Everybody's getting their budget stuff in by the end of October. The legislative time frame is very similar. It's kind of a parallel track. It's very fluid. It's all a work in progress. So hopefully we'll have more information in the coming weeks and months. But at least for once, the first time in my 20 years I've been around, there's at least some funds out there to go after, which is a good thing.
Yes, a little brighter than it's been in the past, recent memory at least, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank
Great.
you, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Next, Dr. Clardy will have Kentucky Oral History Commission report. Dr. Clardy.
I'm not seeing him.
Dr. Clardy is not in.
Oh, he's not with us today?
Not with us
Okay.
today.
Okay. All right.
Judge, if you don't mind, and I'll be really brief with it. And
Okay. Certainly.
On that piece too. I can't recall the timing for this, but our Sarah Schmidt took a new job, retransferred over to the Kentucky Arts Council, and she was managing the Oral History Commission and administering their commission. Dr. Mandy Higgins is going to take over that role right now. So Mandy, I didn't know if you would just briefly tell everybody what our ideas are for helping to continue to help support the Oral History Commission.
Yeah, so I'm really honored to have the opportunity to work with the Oral History Commission. It's an incredible piece of that we get to do, that we get to administer. So in an attempt to really serve oral historians across the state, we're looking at moving the administration of the commission into my day-to-day work. And that means helping with the grant funding and liaising with the gubernatorial appointed commission, and then hiring a specialist in oral history who can do processing and serve KHS's oral history needs, as well as someone who can work in field services and outreach and do oral history there. So the Oral History Commission is being well served, hopefully. I can live up to Sarah's standards and follow in her well-laid path. We do have 5 grant applications that are under review right now, and we'll have a report on that in January for y'all. And the commission meets in December to decide their leadership and do those sorts of things.
And just for our new folks, Mandy, correct me if I'm wrong, if I say this wrong, but Kentucky has the only state-funded Oral History Commission of all the other states. So it's a proud program that to be a part of. So thank you.
Okay, great. And I know Tommy Hines is with us, and Tommy has a report from the Kentucky Museums and Heritage Alliance.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief too. We had our first meeting in over a year on September 27th, and we had it here at South Union Shaker Village, our first live meeting, I should say, that was not Zoom. And we have been working also with bylaws and trying to kind of change the structure of KMHA. One of the things that we've done probably since the inception of this group is have 9 regional representatives from across the Kentucky state that represents, everyone. We've always had a hard time though getting enough people involved from certain areas of the Commonwealth. So we have decided to look in a different direction and try to seek out board members who can just be engaged, hopefully more diverse, and that is the direction we're going to move in. We do not want to neglect the small museums, the rural museums across the state at all. We want to be very active with those organizations, but the regional representatives concept just has not really worked the way that we hoped it would. So that's one of the main things we're working toward right now. We're having our second meeting in November at the Kentucky Horse Park. So we're going to try to do that in person as well. It seems to work very well for us. We're a small organization, but just stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate the work you do. I have a few announcements to give to everyone. Of course, as I've already stated, the KHS annual meeting will be Friday, November 5th at 5:30, and it will be a Zoom webinar meeting. So you'll be receiving some information on that over the next couple of weeks. Please notice that when you get it, and we look forward to everybody joining us on that. Also, next year, starting in 2022, you'll see the dates listed for your meetings. In 2022, January 21st, April 15th, July 15th, and October 22nd. So those are the dates that you can put on your calendar to schedule the quarterly board meetings. I'll just finish up by saying, it's been a pleasure and an honor, since this is the last meeting that I'll be conducting as president of the KHS in a formal capacity. It's been a pleasure and honor to be a part of this organization and to be on the board of directors. History means a great deal to me, and we certainly can all be proud as Kentuckians for the rich history that we do have in this state. And, the United States would not be what it is without the history and the individuals that Kentucky has provided to build it. And so I think that we should all be proud. We should all do everything we can to let that history be told and to enable that history to be learned by as many as possible. I think that history gets taken for granted. History gets shoved to the back. You know, our education of today doesn't place a great emphasis on history, but we can all learn from history. We all know that history is so important. And I just think if people have the opportunity to look at it, to study it, to learn it, they get such a great appreciation for it. And we mentioned the historical markers. I think avenues such as that are a great way to open people's minds and hearts to history. Last thing I'll just say is that, you know, the first meeting we held, we were all together. From that point on, we've not been able to be together, except I think we had one meeting that we tried to have it as a meeting. We had about maybe a third of the membership there. A lot of the membership had to join by Zoom. And then we had, of course, the uptick in COVID and caused us to have to shut down again. And a lot of the things that I hoped we could see accomplished over the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do. And of course, there's reasons behind that. But, you know, our staff and our folks are so good. They've been able to hold this organization together. They've been able to make progress and move forward with the KHS, even though the foundation on which it sits has been shaky. You know, it's been tough to hold an organization together and to keep moving forward when all of the issues that they've had to deal with have made it so tough. A lot of organizations haven't been able to survive or have been weakened significantly. Our organization has not. And I put that right back to the employees and the great job they do, and to our board membership and the strength of their character and their desire, again, to see history be an important role in all our lives. So thank you all very much. I'm not sure what role I can play in the future with KHS. I'm willing to do anything and everything you need me to. So anytime you have something that you need me to participate in or need me to be a part of or need me to help on, all you have to do is let me know. And I will certainly try to be there cheering you on and doing my part to help. So with that, I thank you. And not only have I got great respect for all of you, I've made a lot of new friends on this board. And I just appreciate that so much. So God bless each of you. And we look forward to seeing you sometime in the future. I'm sure our paths will get to cross again in some manner. God bless. And that is all I have. Scott, any additional comments that you wish to make?
No, I'm just going to do one more shout out because I think I had him in the, he wasn't up on our panelist attendee, to say thanks to Dr. Lee for his service on the board. I don't know if he could hear
Absolutely.
us. He was over in the other, we had to elevate him up, but thank you, Dr. Lee, for your service in Geneva. I don't know if Geneva is still on the call. She was, we were having some technical difficulty with that too. So again, we started off the meeting with that. I'll be coming to visit you if you didn't catch that.
Okay.
I'm in Bowling Green enough to come visit.
Yeah, you're going to be the team.
Walk by Dr. Lee's house often. But anyhow,
I certainly would like to echo what everyone said about a tremendous experience on the board. I think this is my third term on the board, and the staff is absolutely wonderful. And I'm hugely impressed with the way you all have navigated programming in so many significant ways in a very difficult and unique experience. So it's been a great pleasure for me, and thank you all very much.
All right, everyone. We've ran over about 8 minutes from what I intended. We're just a little over 2 hours. Apologize for that, but we do have one final piece of business we must take care of, and that is an adjournment of our meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We do have a motion. Thank you so much.
Second.
And we do have a second. And I thank all of you. All those in favor of the motion, we can all wave goodbye. Thank you so much. God bless.
Bye.
We'll see
Great
you.
job, Tommy.
Thank you.